Hi, welcome to this series of videos about the safeguarding features in Classroom.Cloud. As you will probably know, when you first log into Classroom.Cloud, you're presented with this dashboard view here. And if you're looking to sort of read up on the safeguarding features, you'll notice there's some checking out guides that you can refer to complement what I'm covering in these videos. You can access those by going to the safeguarding admin guide just here, or the safeguarding user guide just here. And if you're the admin overseeing all of these things within your school or organization, then definitely recommend that you not only make yourself conversant with those guides as well as watching these videos, but to share those with your colleagues as well as a guide and a reckoner for them to refer to as they become familiar with the various features within inside Classroom.Cloud as a safeguarding admin or a safeguarding user. So in this first video, I'm going to show you how you can go about setting up a safeguarding user on your instance of Classroom.Cloud. You'll probably be familiar already with the options down here on the left hand side. And the first thing you're really going to need to do to set up a safeguarding user is to go through to your organization section just here on the left hand side. And once you're in there, it's a case of jumping across into your all users section, and in here you can view, invite and manage all the users within your organization. So let's just jump on in there now. And so what you'll need to do is to essentially invite a user into your organization. To do that, we simply go over here on the left hand side where it says invite user and simply click on to invite user. And then we then need to fill in some details, their email address, and then what role you want to give that person. So let's pop in an email address, and I'll just pop one in here, which will be masked, so you won't actually see the address once it's come up. But you pop an address in there. And in this case, we're going to set this person up as a safeguarding user. So to do that, we simply go to safeguarding user and check the box like so. And then we need to choose which site you want to give them access to as a safeguarding user. So we go to the drop down and we choose the site. There's only one site to choose from here, which is ICT Evangelist. So we just choose that site and we simply click invite. What that will do then is send an invitation out to that user. You can see that it's not active like I am as an active admin right now. But you can see that they've been invited, and we know from the roles section here that they're a safeguarding user, not only from the iconography, but if you just hover over the top, you'll see they've been invited as a safeguarding user. They will receive an email which they can then respond to. You can probably hear that an email had just been received actually. If we jump across into our email client now like so, we'll see that you have been invited to join Classroom.Cloud. So the first thing we have to do from here then, as you can see, is to confirm the email address. You'll also see that, as I showed from the dashboard, there's a direct link in there to the guide as a safeguarding user that you can access through just clicking onto here as well. But I need to confirm my email address and set up a profile and choose a password and all those different things. So simply click onto the bit where it says click here to confirm your email address. It'll open up a new tab and you can just pop the details in. So I'll just fill it in with some information. And I'm just going to give myself a job title of whatever. Is pre-populating some things here, so I'll just take those things out. You don't have to put the phone number in. You do need, however, to put a password in, and please note the password does have to be a relatively complicated one. It needs to have a lowercase, an uppercase, a character and some numbers in there, and a minimum of 8 characters as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and just type in a password into here. Like so. I'm then going to go to this section here and type the same password to confirm it. Like so. And if you'd like to be kept up to date with offers and information about Classroom.Cloud, then simply tick the box, or if not, leave it unticked. I get lots of information about Classroom.Cloud already, so I will not tick that box. We then jump across to here and hit submit. And it now offers me the opportunity to jump into the sign-in page, and it automatically brings me straight in. So I just jump back into here now. We'll see that the dashboard for all users has now changed. Previously it has said invited. It now sees me as being active, and I'm active as a safeguarding user. That's great, and that's how we go about setting up users. It's the same process for setting up an admin as well. I won't do that because it's exactly the same process, except you choose safeguarding admin rather than safeguarding user when you go to the invite section. But it may well be that you want to change the role of the person who is that safeguarding user. You can see on the right hand side we've got the actions section. We can choose to actually remove that person, delete them completely if we wanted to by clicking on the bin option there. But we're going to go to this edit option here. And by clicking onto the edit option, we can then change a few things in there. So we could just change their name, for example. I'm going to put Mike rather than M. And I'm going to put Allsop instead, rather than Anderson or the A or whatever. But the important thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is here in the role section. It may well be that that person has had a promotion and needs to be now the safeguarding admin. So you can click onto there, it switches them from being a safeguarding user to an admin, and that's how you go about changing the roles and updating and changing the users within your organisation. And if you get an extra site, you bring on an extra school within your trust, so forth and so on, and then you can add additional sites by clicking on the drop down here, or for whatever reason, if you needed to disable the user account, that option's just there. We're not going to do it, but I thought I'd highlight that option there as well. And when you're finished, simply a case of going across to update, hitting update, and it will change accordingly. You can now see that it's a safeguarding admin. The icon has changed, the word admin is now there rather than user, so forth and so on. So that is how you set up a new user as a safeguarding admin or a safeguarding user within Classroom.Cloud. In this video, we're going to explore the safeguarding settings from within your organisation as a bit of an overview. We'll dive deeper into some of the options in further videos, but this is where we're going to get our little overview of what is available and where to go to find them. Now, you may think that all things safeguarding are in the section on the left-hand side over here called safeguarding. And to be fair, there's lots of great things to help you with safeguarding inside that section. But that's more about dealing with safeguarding than it is actually setting up things related to safeguarding. And because we're thinking about setting things up, what we need to do is jump into our organisation level just here. And from within here, we'll need to go into settings. And from here, we can then see just below where the mouse is at the moment, we have the safeguarding section. And it's within here that we configure everything to do with safeguarding, the phrase lists, keywords, so forth and so on. So to do this, we simply go into safeguarding. And then within here, you'll see we've got our wide variety of settings that we can play around with. The first one is general, and that's where you have your general safeguarding and phrase monitoring options for your organisation. I'll just dive in there for a second. And this is where we can turn things off and on, such as phrase monitoring. It can obfuscate images when reviewing keyword triggers. So that's giving the option so that particularly sensitive things might be sort of blurred out and what have you. And a lovely feature, which I personally think is really lovely, is to help us at NetSupport with Classroom.Cloud improve by when you actually add your own phrases, keywords and resources about safeguarding into Classroom.Cloud. You share those with us so that we can add those in. Staying on top of the words that young people use for the various things that they get up to and so forth and so on is a never-ending task. And so as you, a user, configure Classroom.Cloud for your particular setting, it's lovely that if you tick that box, if you just turn that on like so, it means that when you do make an amendment, it feeds through to us so that we can then share that learning and add it into our keywords and phrases and so forth and so on to help not just us, but all of our other schools that use Classroom.Cloud as well. So those are the options that are inside the general bit. The other areas in which you can configure, as you'll see if I just jump back into safeguarding, are related to your alerts, the phrase and keyword settings, the phrase and keyword list, time settings for when phrase monitoring is active. It may well be that children take their devices home, for example, and you as a school decide that you don't want those things to be tracked and monitored when students are off site. It sets so that you I'll have to jump in a second, you'll see now. It sets right now as being a full day every single day. So please make sure that whatever you choose in here is directly relatable to you. Now, some more options we'll dive into later within there. And then the final section is the safeguarding resources, and I say in a subsequent video we'll dive deeper into what's in there as well. But that's where you get into your safeguarding settings for your organisation that brings back changes that can happen on a global level. In this video, we're going to have a look at safeguarding alerts. We recognise, as I'm sure you do, that colleagues don't just sit on Classroom.Cloud waiting for something to happen, for something to occur, for a child to trigger an issue. So with that in mind, you'll want to set up your safeguarding alerts so your various admins and safeguarding users know when there's an issue to actually explore. So we can set that up in our configuration here. We're inside our organization. So organization level settings inside safeguarding, where we can see all of our safeguarding settings, and safeguarding alerts is in this section just here. And to set up, configure those email alerts when something happens, we simply go into here. And as you can see, there aren't any alerts set up at the moment, but to add an alert we simply go to add alert, and then we just fill in the various options we want to sort of trigger the alert. So the first thing you want to do is choose a site. Well, we've only got one site, so we'll just choose that. There it is. Then we'll select the person who is responsible for it. Now it may well be you've got a variety of different safeguarding users. One could be related to drug misuse, one might be related to child abuse or sexual exploitation or whatever. Okay, so you can really drill down into making sure that the right people get the alerts related to the things that fall within their remit. For these example videos, we've only got the 2 users, which are actually just me anyway. So I'll just choose one of those. So Mike Alsop is the safeguarding user. And then we choose what priorities. So it could be an urgent or a high or a medium. So you choose, or it could be all 3 or any combination thereof. You choose which ones you want to be the trigger. So let's just say it's only the urgent or high priority ones that this person would receive an email alert on. We hit apply, and then we choose the categories that are related to that particular person. So again, only one person, so they probably want all of these in there as well. But again, based upon the numbers of staff that you have covering as safeguarding users, you can really, like I say, be bespoke about which sorts of alerts they actually get. And if you wanted to select all, there is a select all button at the top, which you can just choose to actually deselect all or select all if you want to. Choose apply when you're there, and then we hit add, and that will add that as an alert in this view here. And as you sort of bring up and create more alerts, should you want to filter those for any reason, then there's a filtering option just here through the search button. And you can filter in a variety of ways. You can also sort. So let's say, for example, you wanted to see all the users grouped together. You can actually just click onto users and it would sort the user list and then group those users together. You'll also notice over here on the right hand side we've got an actions option just here, and if we click on there we can actually use this section now to sort of manage the columns that are within inside your safeguarding alerts. You can also add new columns as well if you want to. You can reset things back to where they were previously. You can lock, unlock, so forth and so on. Well worth having a little play around with, certainly as you start to develop things within your organisation. But for now, that's how we set up a safeguarding alert. I'll hit save on there, nothing's actually changed. And that's how you set up safeguarding alerts in Classroom.Cloud. Welcome to this video on safeguarding settings in Classroom.Cloud. In this particular video, we're going to look at phrase and keyword settings. Now, this is where we configure all things to do with phrases and keywords. It's not actually to do with the phrases themselves, but about where they are checked and monitored and all these different things. So to have a little play around with those settings and look at what we want to try and do with that, we simply need to go into phrase and keyword settings. To do that, we click on this section just here. And immediately you'll notice there are three sort of tabbed headings here. The first one covers general settings, and then we have settings related to apps that are monitored or not based upon your choices, and websites and how they're interacted with as well. Let's start the ball rolling by jumping into the general section just here. So we click on the general, and as we look through, there's a variety of options that relate to the settings that we can configure for our particular organisation. The first thing is to look at the detection sensitivity. And so if we make it move along like so, we can see that we have a high detection sensitivity. And if we go lower, then obviously we get a lower detection sensitivity. But as it shares here, okay, we adjust that to include or exclude minor variations when matching phrases. So it's a fine art, and you'll get to sort of get a feel as children start using devices across your setting whilst being monitored by Classroom.Cloud. But one of the downsides to having a lower sensitivity is that it can increase the likelihood of false positives being triggered. So maybe to start off with, have it somewhere around a sort of halfway mark around about here, and configure and play around with that as you sort of start to get to grips with Classroom.Cloud in your particular setting. Another great option in here as well, you'll know your students far better than we do, but you'll know what sort of other languages are being used within your setting, particularly by those learners who have English as an additional language. So if you've got some Polish students or Lithuanian or whatever language is being used, you can add in additional language packs into Classroom Cloud to assist with its monitoring. To do that, we simply go to the drop down here and we find the language. So let's say it is Lithuanian, and we want Romanian and Spanish and Welsh, because we're a Welsh school, for example. Choose those options, hit apply, and those extra variants are then added in to the tracking within your particular setting. You can also look at sources. So where are these things being sort of tracked? So it could be anything that's copied. It could be anything within Microsoft Teams, anything that's typed, or on web page titles. Okay, so you can choose what you want to actually be sort of recognised as a source within the tracking that happens within Classroom.Cloud. It may well be that you feel that copied isn't an option for you, so you can simply click onto that and remove that, or equally have it back on, entirely up to you. Again, as you familiarise yourself and become accustomed to using Classroom.Cloud in your organisation, so you'll get a feel for the sorts of things you want to be working. And what's nice about Classroom.Cloud is that you can configure it to work best with your particular setting. It's nice to know you've got the features if you want them, but if you don't want them, you can easily turn them off. Now, the bottom section here relates to what happens when a particularly high priority incident happens. Low risk incidents don't have this happen. It'll just tell you that the thing has happened. But if there's a high priority trigger, an urgent trigger, then what Classroom.Cloud will do, and we'll explore that in more detail in a later video. But when you look at a more severe risk incident, Classroom.Cloud will record two things. Firstly, it will record a snapshot of the thing actually happening, but then additionally to that, it will also record a video of what has happened. And so that's what this slider here relates to. and you can see it in the informational button just underneath. As it says, screen activity recorded 15 seconds before the phrase is triggered to 15 seconds after, so you can get a really good contextual feel for what has been happening. As it tells you, total length may be longer than 30 seconds if multiple phrases are triggered. Sometimes that can happen with a chat. A student might say a lot of things in one particular instance of typing. Again, be mindful of how long you want to have before, and I say whatever you choose to be on your slider, it will be 10 seconds before, 10 seconds after, it will be 20 seconds before, 20 seconds after, so forth and so on. So you have a think about what would be right and relevant for your particular setting, and then make that change and option choice as you see fit there. So those are just the general settings. Okay, now going to jump into settings for apps and websites. And actually, whilst apps and websites are obviously different things, the way in which we engage within the settings here are actually pretty similar. So if we jump into apps, we'll see a bunch have already been populated for tools that your children might regularly use within your setting. So from tools like Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, so forth and so on. Okay, they're all there. Now you can see there's an option to actually add some more things in there. So let's say, for example, you wanted to add, let's say, Illustrator. You could just go into add application, put in Illustrator.exe. The friendly name would be Illustrator, and you can choose whether or not it's monitored or not monitored. Okay, so I'm going to go for monitored, and then you can choose the risk. In here, this sort of changes whether or not it's a high risk or a particularly low risk activity or location. Okay, I'm going to make it low risk. There isn't much as potentially going to happen inside Illustrator. But as you can see, we've automatically configured things like Teams, where lots of chat might happen and children might sort of say things to each other that aren't particularly useful or helpful, so forth and so on. So we can choose tools that particularly maybe high risk, like so. Within here, each of these different tools can be either deleted or configured again. So go into Word, and we can see the options are there, and we can make it high risk, for example, or we can hit it unmonitored, and so forth and so on. When you're done, simply hit update and it'll update it. We can filter things out. We can choose options and then go to change the status, which gives the option to be monitored or not monitored. Again, just another way of doing a similar thing that we might do inside our edit options just over here. And we can also, when we've got a longer list, perhaps search under one of the headings that are there as well. So I said that the apps option here was quite similar to websites, and as we'll jump in, you'll see it really is. We can filter like before, we can change status like before, we can add websites like before, and we're populated with a bunch of sites and tools that may cause relevance or concern, or might be related to what your children might be using, so forth and so on. So it might be, for example, you think that YouTube is something which actually could be of high risk, so we can simply go over to here to actions, change that to being a high or medium. I'll change it to high and go to update. It may well be though that children who are visiting the Samaritans, you might want to actually make that one which is unmonitored. You might share with your young people that if they want to go and get some help and some advice, then that will not be tracked whilst they're on there talking to the Samaritans, so forth and so on. So as you can see, lots and lots of ways in here where you can really make Classroom.Cloud really bespoke to your particular setting, linked to your values, what you're trying to check, what you're trying to keep an eye on within your setting. Super easy to manage, super easy to add in extra websites, extra apps if you want to, and obviously massively configurable within the general settings there as well. So that's how you set up your phrase and keyword settings in Classroom.Cloud. So hi, welcome back, and in this video we'll be looking at how you can modify and amend some of the phrases and keywords that are held as part of the safeguarding section here in Classroom.cloud. So as before, we'll simply go from the dashboard here into our organization. Remember, anything to do with the settings around safeguarding aren't in safeguarding, they're in the organization and in your settings area just here. So we'll click onto settings, and then we're searching for safeguarding, and there's safeguarding there. And we've already looked at general and safeguarding alerts and phrase and keyword settings, and here we're now looking to go into the phrase and keyword list. And as I said, we'll be looking to modify different things related to the different keywords and phrases inside Classroom.cloud as part of the safeguarding package. So we dive on into here, and straight away you'll see the list of phrases and keywords, and there are literally thousands and thousands of them. Now you can, if you want to, filter those by going into the filter here, and we can do that by language. We can change the priorities, we can do it for categories. So let's say we only wanted to see drug related words which were of a particularly high priority, so really urgent. So take these like so, apply that. Okay, there's nothing to show there, that's absolutely fine. Let's just add in some bullying and adult and cybersecurity and eating disorders as well, and then we've got a few there. Brilliant. So let's say I wanted to change something related to some of these words in here. All I simply need to do is to move over to the little edit icon you can see on the right hand side like so. To change any of the settings, we simply choose the amendment option, and then the phrase comes up. It has a suggestion there, it's got the categories already there, and we can now change the priority from urgent to medium to low to off to whatever it is that we want there, like so. Once you've made any changes you want, simply hit the option update, and that will update that option like so. To clear any filters you've had previously, we simply go to clear all filters, and the full list then comes back in, so forth and so on. We also have some other options inside here. So for example, we can actually just quickly amend these. So let's say I want to change this one to high. I can simply do that very, very quickly if I want to do that on a more sort of quick way of doing these things. And as before, we can sort of choose to have these things sorted in a different way by clicking on these, and just as we saw previously in the other views from the phrase and keyword settings, so forth and so on. So that's how we, in our phrase and keyword list, can amend things and change things as I demonstrated there. Thank you. In this video, we're going to be looking at safeguarding settings related to the times at which the monitoring is active. We've already explored some of these settings in here, but for the time settings, as you'll probably see from the icon and the word time settings, the place and space where we go to do this is here. If you need a reminder, to get here, we simply go to Organisation, then into Settings, and into Safeguarding. Okay, please don't, as I've shared before, go into the safeguarding area here. All of your settings for safeguarding are all inside the organisation, in settings, and then in the option safeguarding. So let's dive over into our time settings, into here, and you'll see that as default we've got our time settings for all of the time. Now you may want to have that as standard for you. It might be right for your setting. It might be, however, that for example children have their devices outside of school, and as a school in conjunction with conversations with parents and listen to parent voice and so forth and so on, that you don't want devices monitored outside of school hours. So how do you go about changing that sort of thing? You also might want to not have devices monitored during school holidays, or when they're not on your school Wi-Fi, for example. And we can make all of these changes and settings within here. This is the school hour settings. Here's your term date settings, where we can put the start and end dates for your various terms, and you can put your options in here for your monitored networks, or you can have it for every network by leaving it blank, as you can see just here. So if I go to school hours though, let's just say the school start time, for example, is 8 o'clock, let's say. That's gone for 8 p.m. actually, so let's just change that back a second. So the start time again will be, there you go, I've chosen, I'm going off the inside clock for the 24-hour clock. Let's go for the 8. Okay, and school starts actually at 8:30, so monitoring starts at 8:30, and the end time then would maybe be something like 3. If I can just bring that back round. I'm not doing it because of the time there. Come on. And you see 1500 as well, actually. So let's try that again. Wasn't my best moment there, was it? So 15, and let's call it 15:30, like so. Okay. And that's how we change the times, and we do that for each day. Now, it may well be that you don't want it on Sunday at all, you don't want it on Saturdays, and it's only during the normal school week. So again, just make the changes that you want. So we're starting again at 8, and it'll be 30. Okay, that. And the end time then would be something like we said before, like 3:30, like so. And so you repeat that over and over and over for each of the days and times that you want. It may well be that you have a longer day on a Monday and Tuesday, shorter days on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Whatever's right and sort of fit for your particular setting. And when you're done, simply hit the update option, and that will put all of those into place and space there as you want them. Next, looking at term dates, if we go into this section here, very, very simple. We just simply put in our start date. So just for argument's sake, let's say you are on holiday from the, let's say the 8th of April for the Easter holidays, down through until children due back in on the 25th. So you just pop those dates like so, update that, and that's now put in like so. And if you obviously have more than one term, you can build them up over time. So let's say we're going to be doing our summer holidays. Let's say we break up on the 8th of July, and that runs through right until September the 5th when children return then. So we do that like so, add dates, and we just keep on going until we've got all of our different term dates all built in there. Okay, so that's how you do that, half terms, so forth and so on. If you want to remove any of those, it's simply a case of going on to the X like so, which removes it, and I always just choose to update it afterwards as well. The final section is networks, and this is where you can choose where specifically children's devices or staff devices are being monitored. So it could be that you can do it from a monitored IP address, so only monitor students when they are coming from the following IP addresses, and you'll have that IP range for your organisation. Or it could be when on a particular network name. So let's say the SSID for me is MS for Mark School. Okay, and we'll call it MS Wi-Fi, like so. Add network name, and now Classroom.Cloud will only monitor when a child's device is actually on that particular network. Okay, as with always, hit the update button at the end, and that's how you can configure Classroom.Cloud's monitoring during particular school hours, within particular term dates, on particular networks. In this video, we're going to look at how you can configure the safeguarding resources within Classroom.Cloud. To get into the section for the configuration of these resources, simply go into this section here titled Safeguarding Resources. Once you're in there, you'll notice, as you'll have seen in some of the other videos and probably from your exploration, sort of digging around the various settings in Classroom.Cloud, you'll notice this tabbed kind of setup across the top here. But you'll notice that resources is currently greyed out. Now that's greyed out because a region hasn't been selected. So how do we get into there? How do we get all that working? Well, the first thing we want to do is to make sure we're going to be showing the safeguarding resources, and then we can click on this drop down to see the different regions. Now the different regions have different relatable resources. So for example, if we're in Australia, the resources there would be different to what you might find in the United Kingdom, for example. You can scroll through the list to find the country that you want, or alternatively you can just click at the top and start to type the name of the country or the region you want to link through to. So we're going to choose United Kingdom, and once you've chosen that region, you'll notice now that is sort of not greyed out anymore. It's more visible, and you can click onto that section now and see what the resources are that are available. And like in many of the views where you get a setup like this with the columns and whatnot, you can see there are editable actions on the right hand side here as well. You can remove them, so forth and so on. And I'll dig deeper into that in just a moment. But the first thing we want to do is really set up our general settings. So the first thing we've done is chosen to show our safeguarding resources, and that will mean that those will be visible to our learners when we have the student toolbar on. But you can make them available through a desktop shortcut, but that only works in Windows. But if you wanted to have that added to your desktop, then you can simply do this, and that will add the student desktop shortcut onto their Windows devices. You can also exclude safeguarding resources from keyword monitoring. So if a child, for example, wants to go to Ask Frank or wherever, Samaritans, those sort of things, and do some research, you can exclude those resources from any monitoring that they're doing. Again, it could be a false positive anyway. You might want to say that you're going to afford your students privacy when they're looking into those different things. That's entirely up to you. And to turn that on, to toggle that on, simply a case of just turning it on like so. So once you've made your settings, it's just a case, as always, of hitting the update button like so. Now, once you've done that, you may want to configure those resources as well. So it might be that you want to remove a resource. So, for example, you might want to take Addiction NI off, for example, if you wanted to. You can simply remove it by clicking onto the delete icon just here on the right hand side. The same with any of the resources that are in here. And if you want to configure them further, simply go into the actions option here for editing that particular resource, and you can change the URL, you can change the name, the phone number, any description things. And as always, when you're finished, simply hit the update button and that will update that resource for you. So that's how you configure the safeguarding resources for your organisation inside Classroom.Cloud. In this video, we're going to move away from the safeguarding settings section. All the videos so far in this little run through on the safeguarding options and settings within inside Classroom.Cloud are all centered in this area where we can configure everything from our alerts to our keywords to time settings, the Wi-Fi networks we monitor, so forth and so on. But in this video, we're going to jump directly into the safeguarding section here, the place and space where most safeguarding users will spend most of their time. So we jump into here, what we'll see straight away is a list of all of the flags, the triggers, the phrase matches for your particular organisation. And these are obviously just sample example versions here for this particular video. These aren't live for a real school. This is just something we use for our demonstration purposes. But in this view, there's a whole lot of information that we can get in a glance. We're currently looking at things by grouped by activities. We've got some bullying things here. We've got some drug-related ones here, radicalisation, suicide, so forth and so on. You might notice on the side over here under the media heading that some don't have anything there, but some have a picture, some have a picture and a sort of video icon here as well. And that relates to whether any media was recorded as part of the triggered activity. So if it's low, for example, like this one here where someone's typed the word BDs, and clearly they've asked the question, what are BDs? Okay, it's a low risk event. You can obviously dive deeper into it and find out more about it and that sort of thing. But when there are more urgent triggers, then Classroom.Cloud will not only record an image of what actually happened, but a little video of what's happened as well. And you'll remember previously in the safeguarding settings, you can choose how many seconds before and after is recorded on the screen when something's actually triggered. So urgent cases, urgent triggers will sort of call in an image and a video. High triggers will be just a photo. Anything below that will just be the information. So this is the view we get as standard when we go into here. We can group things, as you can see, by category. We can do it by priority, risk, user, so forth and so on. So I could do a user there, and I'm going to group those like so, and you'll see all things sort of there's bullying and drugs and all that sort of stuff, and it's just done by user now because we've chosen to group them by user. You can have categorization off. However you want it to be viewed is entirely up to you, and you can choose whether or not to include false alarms or not as well. You can also filter your results as well on a variety of levels. So it could be their status, their category, their source, what the priority is, the risk, which site it was, what dates or times. Lots of different ways you can sort of configure what you can see in this view. You'll know what works best for you as you start to pull in triggers in your organization when you're using Classroom.Cloud. So what's lovely is that it's really sort of malleable. You can really make it work for you and be bespoke for you, for your needs, for your setting, for your particular context. Something else though that's really nice in this particular view is that lists can be somewhat unwieldy. So there's a bit of power under the bonnet, so to speak, when it comes to thinking about this. We've got a variety of charts that we can view. So if we go over to this option here, we can see, first of all, we've got it showing as a pie chart where it breaks it down by category there. We can choose to have labels on and values on and all these things here. There's a legend here to explain what the different colours represent. But if you click onto the pie charts icon here again, what it will do is it will turn it into a variety of other charts as well, based upon whatever you think works best for your organisation. And as you press on the icon, so it sort of cycles through those different options. And any of these things that we can view here, as you can see from the icon just above, can be printed out as a report for you to view on paper, should you want to have that actual record. The favourite view, however, not just for myself, which is true, I think it's absolutely fantastic, it's really, really useful, but also from what we hear from our customers, is the word cloud view. If we jump into the word cloud view, what it does, it shows all of the keywords, the phrases that have been triggered, that have matches within your organisation, and those which have been used most frequently are then clearly the largest word on that particular word cloud. It can often form, as I've heard from some of our customers, as a great opportunity for a bit of professional learning to learn what some of these terms actually mean. And you can find out more about that by drilling down into each of the sections, and you'll get a definition for each of those words as well. But a really useful way of sort of keeping a finger on the pulse of the sort of things that your students, the children within your setting are looking at, typing about, writing about, so forth and so on, however you're choosing to monitor whatever it is that they're doing. And so this is the place and space where you can view all of the information related to any of the phrase matches within your organisation. So as I say, a good starting point might be your list, okay, where you can see all these things, but to see a really good overview, perhaps choose either your word cloud like so, or then perhaps view things as one of the charting options here. That's how you can view all the phrase matches for your organisation using Classroom.Cloud. So in the last video, you saw how we can view phrase matches for your organisation in a variety of ways, one of which was in the list view like this. Another way was to view things as a word cloud. The other way was to look at things as a chart, and we learned that there were different charts that you can view just by clicking repeatedly on the chart option here. But I wanted to spend a moment drilling down into what we get when we view any of these particular things in our list view here. So for example, if I jump onto this one here, for example, okay, it's got the word abuse has been typed, it's matched the abuse category. So I go into here and we get the information about that particular thing. It happened on this date at this time, is a medium risk. The risk analysis gives it a score of 30. It tells us it was on an unsupervised device, it was on a low risk website, medium priority. But it does give us some information, which is there were some more than 3 incidents of the same category in the last 24 hours from this particular student. So the fact that they're using these kind of phrases and these sort of searches might give us reason to maybe have a little conversation with this particular students. We can also go in and change the status of this particular flag at the moment and just change it from new to in progress. So it's in progress. Notes will speak with the students. Okay, great. Now You can also at this point go into here, we can choose to copy the information from here, we can email it to somebody, and we can print it out as well if you want to as well. In another video as well, we do have links directly through into two of the most commonly used safeguarding central sort of record tools of CPOMS and My Concern. When those are actually linked through, then you have the option on this screen as well to send this information directly through to that system if that's one that you're using within your setting as well. But I've got the notes on here already. I'm happy with that. That's job done. Now I could at this point choose to just close that by going to the X in the top right hand corner. What I can do is then just choose to, if I'm working through all of these different things as a safeguarding user or the admin, it might be that I don't want to jump out to the list and click back into the list. So to simply move on to the next record, we use the arrows here. Just to explain what each arrow means. The first arrow will put you to the beginning of the list. That will take you to the previous item. That will take you to the next item. This one will take you to the end of the list. And you can sort of get a clock of where you are with all those things by looking at this option, this information down here saying showing 2 of 30. If I move on to the next one, for example, it will now say showing 3 of 30. Okay, so there we go. We've got the information there. Happy days. I'm going to close that one away. What I'd like to do now, though, is show you where you can see even more information. As I've shared previously, you can see on the right-hand side here where media has been recorded when something has actually happened. So if I just jump through to one where we've got both an icon for a picture and a bit of video as well, that's something that happens when an urgent flag has happened. Okay, so we've got one here for, again, the same students. Okay, and if I jump into this one here now, we'll see again, it's new, there's no notes on it yet, but we'll see that I've got a screenshot. Okay, and if I jump onto this tab here, there's a video that can be watched as well too. So I click onto the screenshots, I can then click on it to see it at a larger sort of resolution, so I can actually read it and see it. The students clearly typed, "How can I kill someone?" Okay, now that in itself might look quite bad, but is there any more context to that? Well, we can find that out by actually watching the video. Jump onto the video and we can press play. Now it's quite small here, but we can actually make it bigger. So you can see what is a burner phone, what is suicide. So starting off with the question, what is suicide? Okay, the video is carrying on a bit longer now. Facts about suicide. Okay, so is this student actually doing some research in suicide? Okay, well, they've looked at some things. They haven't actually looked at any sites, though. What age rating is Suicide Squad? Oh, they're clearly going a bit off task here. Maybe they're inspired by the topic they're studying, perhaps. I don't know. So they've asked about what suicide is, and now how can I kill someone? Okay, well, this is clearly something which, is worthy of a conversation, at least I would suggest. So I can now do, now jumped into some work about science. Well, the students off task, they're looking at things they probably shouldn't be, asking some questions which will be giving some sort of concern. So what I can do now is I can just minimize that back to here. I can go to in progress, I can go to note, I can put in a note, speak with student and call home, add to record. And just send that off like so. It's now recorded. I've now completed that particular thing. Remember, as I said before, you can, when the things are linked through, send these things across into CPOMS or My Concern if you want to add them into your central record. But you can actually have these things flagged in here as well. So you'll see now this one is now in progress. These two are in progress, so forth and so on. You can see now who's updating them and when and so forth and so on as well. So lots of information within this screen, and that's how we can dive in. We can actually see the records, we can see what's in there, we can see the evidence, so forth and so on. And the filter tools, say we've got this Nick student here quite a lot, but want to see all the Nick Umansky ones, for example, I can go into here and do a search and type for the user, so Nick Umansky, and as I'm typing these things in, you can see it's filtering everything away. And clearly this Nick student is someone who does need a bit of a word with, is clearly doing a few inappropriate things, might lead to a bigger question. It might be worthwhile speaking to your colleagues about this, students. But what you've got is a really great record of their activities online, which can reinforce any sort of support packages you might want to be giving that young person related to whatever it is they're doing within your setting. Again, this is all exemplar stuff. You know your job as a safeguarding user or admin within your school. That's not my place to tell you, but the tools here can really massively help and support you with what it is that you're doing. If you want to clear away that particular filter with the search there, simply click onto the X just here, and that will bring everything back to where you were previously. That's how you can drill down further into each of the different records which are in your safeguarding, triggers, records, so forth and so on, here within Classroom.Cloud. So welcome to this video. We're going to be looking in this one at the Safeguarding Groups feature in Classroom.Cloud. So in previous versions of Classroom.Cloud, we were quite limited in how we could apply safeguarding settings. They could either be applied at an organisational level or they could be applied to individual sites or schools. Now, what the safeguarding groups allow our customers to do is to apply these settings on a much more granular level. So we can apply these settings against individual users, groups of users, devices, or even a network or device that the device is connected to. So we can have one configuration when the device is in school and a separate configuration if a student takes that device home and connects it to their home Wi-Fi. So if we just jump now into the safeguarding groups here, I'm just going to start by showing you my demo server actually. So this is Active Directory. For those of you that aren't familiar with Active Directory, it's basically a component that can be added, installed on a Windows server, and it basically stores details of all the user accounts on the network, the computer accounts, and you can also create groups to help organize users and computers. So you can see here that I've set up a group called Vulnerable Students. And so if I just jump in here, you'll see this group has got one member, Benny Green. So going back to Classroom.Cloud portal, we just click on edit in our safeguarding group, and you can see that I've given it a name, Vulnerable Student Safeguarding Group. And what I'm looking at is an Active Directory user group. That's the group I've just shown you, and I want that user group to match the name Vulnerable Students. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say apply these settings to anyone in the Vulnerable Students Active Directory user group, and in our case that will be just our student Benny Green. So if I just click on this cog just here, there we go. So I click on that cog, and this is where I can actually come in and put in my custom settings. You can see we've got a number of options here. What we're going to do today is just change the priority on one of the phrases in our phrase list. So we'll do a quick search here. Let's go and search for the phrase THC. And you can see here that by default this phrase has a priority of low. But for this particular safeguarding group, I'm going to set this to urgent, and that's all we need to do just here. So if I just jump into my classes, and I'm going to start a class now, and you can all enjoy Winter Bob there for a moment when he just comes up. There we go. And so you can see that I've got two students in my class when it comes up. There you go, I've got Trisha and Benny. So first of all, I'm just going to take control of Trisha's device, and we're just going to type into Notepad the phrase THC. So we're triggering a phrase match. And then if we just do this same quickly for Benny. So now we should have a phrase match on the phrase THC for both students. So if I just end that class now, and we go into our phrases, what you'll see is we've detected the phrase match THC. Now for Trisha, you'll see it's registered as a low priority because she's still getting those default settings. But because Benny's a member of that safeguarding group, the phrase THC has come up through as an urgent priority. And that's basically how the safeguarding groups work. Now, you can obviously apply different settings, so you can do things like turn off the safeguarding resources, or maybe not detect phrases that are in the titles of web pages or being copied. So there's lots of different ways you can apply this, but that's just a kind of quick overview so you get an idea of how safeguarding groups works within Classroom.Cloud. So hi, welcome to this next video, and in this video we're going to be exploring some of the more advanced features in safeguarding groups. Now if you've watched the previous video you might have had some questions about what else you can do. Well, in this one we're going to explore things in a bit more depth, and if you haven't watched that previous video please do so before you continue watching this one. So look, let's just jump straight into safeguarding groups here, and you'll see we've got that group we set up in the previous video, the vulnerable students group. So I'm just going to click on the edit option here, and if you remember what we did, we set up a safeguarding group applying some stricter safeguarding settings for any of our students who are in the AD user group vulnerable students. Now let's imagine a scenario that might occur in a school. Let's say we've got a common room and there are some machines in there. There's not always going to be a teacher or a member of staff around to keep an eye on things, so I want to apply these stricter settings to those common room machines as well. So what I can do is I can click on the plus button just up here on the right hand side, and we're going to select the device name, and I'm going to go with equals, and I'm just going to use one of my machines, so it's going to be MWCIC02, and that's the rules set up there. Now if I had multiple machines in my common room and they're all started with the prefix MW, rather than using equals, I could use the option here, it starts with. So you can see we've got a number of options here. So I could do something, it starts, ends with, or contains, or doesn't contain. So it doesn't always have to be an equals. We've got a variety of different filters we can use here. So when you've got multiple conditions, this drop down here can become really important, because what I can do is I can match on either of these conditions or on both of them. So if I selected match all of the following conditions, what would happen in this scenario for the settings to be applied? A student in this vulnerable students group would have to log on to this specific machine. So it's kind of limiting where those options are going to be applied. However, if I pick match any of these following conditions, if a student in the vulnerable students group logs on to any of these machines, the setting is going to be applied, and that's what I want to do today. So if I just go over to here and click on save, yeah, there's that machine there. Just go over here and click on to save and apply, and we'll jump onto our machine here. This is a machine with my demo user Trisha Yates. If you remember, Benny Green was in the vulnerable students group, but Trisha wasn't. So Trisha previously wasn't having the stricter settings being applied, but if I type in the same word as we used previously, that was the THC. What we should see happen when we jump into our phrase matches is this should trigger as an urgent phrase, because the settings being applied are being applied to this specific machine. So we jump in here and we'll just go into our safeguarding, and we'll see this is the one we've just generated, and this is generated as urgent as we expected there. So if I just go back to our safeguarding groups, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this additional condition here and just save that. Let's remove that and then just hit save. Now you can have multiple safeguarding groups, so it's not just the one, you can add in additional ones. So if we just click to add one, there we go. And again, typical scenario in a school, I've got a group here with all my students in, so let me jump onto my server. So I've created another group for all my students, and if we jump in here, you'll see I've now got both Benny and Trisha as members of this group. So I'm going to create a new safeguarding group for all students. And again, I want to use the Active Directory user group membership. So we're going to go with equals, and the name of my group is all students. So just type in all students. So if we save that and apply that, now you'll see I've got two safeguarding groups here. Now, where you've got more than one safeguarding group, basically the settings will be applied on the first match in the list, and this works similar to DNA with a profile. So if you're familiar with that, DNA will apply the first profile settings that match the user or the computer and ignore any ones that are lower down. So in this case, I've actually broken the vulnerable students group because Benny is in both all students and the vulnerable students. So it's going to apply whatever I set here. It's never going to get to hit this vulnerable students group. So what I want to do is I actually want to drag that group up there. Just click on it and drag it. like so. And it will now process the groups in this particular order. So it will look first of all and say, is the student a member of this vulnerable students group? If they're not, it will process the next rule and say, are they a member of the all students group? And then if they don't match either of those criteria, it will default and it will apply whatever settings I've applied against my site or my school here. So if we apply this now, just going over to apply on the right hand side, and then go back to Trisha. So I just hit apply and then go back to Trisha. What we should find is, because I haven't made any customizations to that particular safeguarding group, if we do a match on THC again, this should now come through as a low priority phrase because we've removed the computer condition from the vulnerable students group and we haven't changed the priority of the word in the all students group. So if you go back into safeguarding, you'll see Trisha has triggered THC. But this time it's come through as being a low priority. So jump in here and there she is, Trisha, and it's now a low priority. So yeah, drag and drop, and we can use that to move things around and set things in the right order. Hopefully you found that deeper dive into the advanced settings in safeguarding groups in Classroom.cloud useful and helpful for your management of Classroom.cloud in your setting.